All right. Good morning. Welcome, Vineyard family. Good to see you. If you're here for the first time, a special welcome to you. We're doing something very special this week that we chose one day, at least many of us have, to work not for ourselves, but for others, that people we will never meet. And today we're bringing that offering and giving that to Convoy of Hope. This is a group of people that they don't only feed children and are there in disasters like in hurricanes and fires and things like that, but what they're doing is what we're doing by supporting them, that we're in places that we could never get to. So your offering today, our one day, changes their every day. I love that. That our one day of giving and of sacrifice makes a huge difference. And if you didn't have an opportunity to do this, or maybe you didn't hear about it, in your seat pockets somewhere around, there's a number of these left with an envelope, a little booklet, just talking about what this is. One of the things you heard earlier with our Women's Christmas event, we've been doing this for probably 30 years now. But this one's going to be a little unique because it's also a fundraiser for women's empowerment through Convoy of Hope. Kim Marie is going to be speaking. She's dynamic. She is a dynamic lady, and it's unbelievable that we have her. But it's about empowering women through helping them start their own businesses in third world countries and in the majority world, where they are not just helping them, but giving them, a foothold in life. And it's really working. It's changing the lives. We're trying to raise $10,000 that we would be able to give to them, in addition to what we're already doing with Convoy of Hope. So I encourage you to be praying about this, and I'm excited for the women's thing. The guys get to dress up, and we get to wear a tie and white shirts, and I get to be a waiter once a year. It's probably good that it's not twice a year. It's just once a year that I get to act like a waiter. But I encourage you to really tune in. So today I want to talk about really God's heart and what our church is really about. Because if you're new to the Vineyard, this can be interesting for you maybe. But if you've been here a while, you know this is our DNA. That we care about people. We care about people that are near us, and we care about people that are far away. I've never been part of a church that have more generosity than you. You give your money, but how you give your lives away. So many of you are volunteering in so many different groups and agencies around our community. You're involved in so many different things, and it's hard for us to celebrate all of it, but I want to just celebrate you. That I'm proud to be a pastor of a group of people that live their life like you do. And so what I want to talk to you about today is really what our church is all about. Jesus has an encounter with some religious leaders that don't get it. They just don't get it. Because they're all about the religion, they're all about their piety and their programs, and they're missing the point. And so Jesus tells them a story about what really matters. So in Luke chapter 10 is the story that's famous called the Good Samaritan. Now don't turn me out if you heard it before, because this is a story that many of you are familiar with, but I hope to give you some new nuances. But this is something that's deep in God's heart and my heart for this church. It's rooted in us, and I think it's rooted in you as well. In Luke 10, one day an expert in religious law stood up to test Jesus by asking him this question. A lot of times they would ask Jesus questions they didn't really want an answer, but it was to trap him or to test him. Teacher, what should I do to inherit eternal life? And Jesus replied, well, what does the law of Moses say? Since they're an expert in that law. And they actually get it right. How do you read it? The man answered, you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your strength, and all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. Right, Jesus told him. You got that one. That's exactly right. Do this and you will live. Interesting. Live like this. Do this and you will experience life. But then the man wanted to justify his actions or lack of action. So he asked Jesus, well, who is my neighbor? Who is my neighbor? I wonder how you would answer that question. Well, watch this as it goes down. Jesus replied with a story, a very famous story in the Bible. A Jewish man was traveling on a trip from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he was attacked by bandits. They stripped him of his clothes, they beat him up, and they left him half dead beside the road. Robbers in the Middle East were notorious to beat their victims if they tried to fight back. If they wouldn't fight back, they would leave them alone. So apparently in this story, this guy that's being robbed fights back. Now here's where we go. By chance, a priest came along. How cool is that? But when he saw the man lying there, he crossed to the other side of the road and he passed him. See, Jesus confronted the religious leaders of his day because they were more concerned about their religious practices than people. In fact, they would wash themselves at the end of the day, a ceremonial washing to wash off all the contamination. And one time they attacked Jesus' disciples. Why don't your disciples wash? Do this ceremonial washing. And the answer to that is because we don't see people as unclean. We're not worried about being defiled or contaminated by touching people in their lives. But they lived this life. They were separate from people. Now, the next person was a temple assistant or Levite, walked over and looked at him lying there, but he also passed by on the other side. So here we got a priest whose life was supposed to be devoted to God, and a temple worker, a layperson who assisted in the religious rites in the temple. And you would expect both of them to do something to help this Jewish man that was in the street, beat up, half dead, and all the rest of it. But neither did anything. They walked right on by, and they're justified in all of it. Then a despised Samaritan came along. And when he saw the man, he felt compassion for him. Jews hated Samaritans. Samaritans hated Jews. They didn't have anything to do with each other. They would walk on the other side of the street. Another Jesus scandal. You know what? The love of God is scandalous. And sometimes we don't get it. It's outrageous. It's radical. It's crazy. It's unconventional. It doesn't fit. It doesn't make sense. And this is another example of God trying to express his heart for his people in all this. He makes the hero of the story not Jewish, but a hated Samaritan. That's nuts. He makes the hero of the story not a Jewish person, but a hated outsider. The least likely person, the hated Samaritan, helps the injured man. It would have been more acceptable if Jesus had told a story about a good Jew helping a wounded Samaritan on the way to Jerusalem. Isn't that nice? The Jewish man helping a Samaritan. For us, it's like having somebody that we look down on, don't highly regard, or even see as an enemy or hate, and that they come to your aid. Think about that. Somebody that maybe just you would disdain, and yet they are the person that comes alongside to help you in your time of need. Let's go on. So going over to him, the Samaritan soothed his wounds with olive oil and wine and bandaged them. And then he put the man on his own donkey, not somebody else's donkey. This is interesting. It's one thing to, use somebody else's. He took his own donkey and he took him to an inn where he took care of him. You got to understand, he risked his life to do this. This is outside of the box. For a Samaritan to show up with a half-dead man on your donkey and show up, in Jewish Jericho will put your life in jeopardy. It's like, what do you think you're doing? This is not a safe thing to do. But there is something that's going on in this Samaritan. He has no legal responsibility, no moral responsibility in that context. And he puts his life at risk for a man that he doesn't even know, for somebody that he's never met before. I think it's important for us to understand love is risky. Say it out loud with me. Love. When you really love someone, it takes a risk because it takes something from you to give to someone else. It's for God so loved the world that he risked the life of his son and gave the life of his son. Real love risks something. It risks what you have. And it was risky for Jesus in his time, and it's risky for us. But I want to tell you, it's worth it. I say this a lot, but I want to say it one more time. I don't know how many chances I'm going to have to say this. But we are most alive when we give our life away. Have you figured that one out yet? Even if you have little, even if life sucks in your neighborhood and what's going on with you and it's just going down, but is there something about when you give what you have and who you and what manner of life that you have to offer, when you give that away, you come alive. I see it for me and I see it for people, over and over again. I love what Erwin McManus, a friend of mine and a great author and speaker, He says we need to let go of a sanitized Christianity and get back to the powerful, raw, and ancient faith that chooses passion over lukewarm religion. Now, that's pretty tough, but I think it's real. Because sometimes religion in its worst context, as opposed to relationship of with Jesus and following Christ, that it protects us. Our religious activity insulates us from the plight of people around us. I was trying to think about some illustrations or some times in my own life. There was a time that Becky and I, we liked to go to Carl's Jr. for breakfast sometimes. And we were there, and one time there was this gal that we overheard her story. Actually, Becky did. I think Becky went to get the food or whatever, and she overheard this gal talking about she was a single mom. Her car had brakes that was scary because even to get to work, and her tires were bald, and her brakes didn't work. And she came back, and she said, we need to do something. And so we said, well, what do we do? It's like we're not responsible, but we heard something. What are we going to do with what we heard? We became aware of what she was telling somebody else. And so we really felt, God leading us to take her car in and get her brakes fixed, get her new brakes, and give her new tires. And it felt really special to do that. And what was funny is she didn't know us, and we didn't know her. But we found out that she was a single mom, which always means something to me because I was raised by a single mom. And we began to see that she was in trouble, and just like, we got to do something. And so that happened not that long ago. There's another story that I think reflects this a little bit, that we had a teenager, Corey Stump. Maybe many of you know Corey. He and his wife Bailey are leading the middle school in the Vineyard in Windsor. And I think when he was 17, that he was driving his truck on one of those cold, crazy cold nights when it's not safe to be, out. And to be homeless is so dangerous. And he saw this homeless guy, and so he decided, he was all alone. He said, I'm gonna give him some food. And so he bought him some food and had him eat the food in the truck. And then he said, you know what? I can't just send him back out on the street. So he took him home without telling his folks. So it was late at night, and his folks woke up in the morning, and there's this homeless guy in the house. And, if you know the Stump family, they are so hospitable and gracious. And they just said, well, that's great. You're here for breakfast. At the same time, they're saying, next time you bring somebody home, will you let us know? Because they go down and here's this homeless guy in their kitchen and all of that. But I was so proud of Corey. He just did what was in front of him. There was just something about this teenager. Not all teenagers are like this, you know that. But he just said, you know what, I got to do something. And so, and at risk, he doesn't know if this is a crazy person, a violent person, or what's going to happen, but he just puts it on the line. And for someone that, this was one of those, the least likely person this homeless guy probably thought is a teenage boy is going to help me tonight. Of all the people that might stop, it's not going to be a teenage boy, but it was. Let's get back on our story. So the next day, this Good Samaritan, he handed the innkeeper 2 silver coins, which is a lot of money, by the way. We don't know if that was all his money. Maybe it was all he had. We don't know. But he said, take care of this man. If his bill runs higher than this, I'll pay you the next time I'm here. Now, when I hear next time, it's like, are you nuts? It's like you're in a neighborhood that you can't survive in very long, and you're going to go back into that neighborhood? You're going to go back if the man needs more help? Are you crazy? It's like he's not thinking about himself whatsoever. And the other thing we see, he followed through. It's one thing to want to help, want to do something. It's another thing to do it, and it's another thing to do it till the end. With the gal at Carl's Jr., that we actually were looking to get her a car, and we thought somebody was donating a car, and I was so excited about going back and giving her a car, but she wasn't working there anymore. And plus, we didn't get the car anyway. But it was one of those things it's one thing to help people on the front end, but there's something powerful about actually not only on the front end, but making really a difference in their life. And so this Good Samaritan, there's not a token moment. It's not, hey, here's some coins and here's this. It says, we're going to the second mile with this deal. Then Jesus reflects on this. He reflects on this saying, now which of these 3 would you say was a neighbor to the man who was attacked by the bandits? And that's what Jesus asked. The lawyer's question was, who is my neighbor? And Jesus doesn't answer it directly. Instead, Jesus reflects on the larger question, to whom must I become a neighbor to? And that's what I want to say to you. It's not just who is my neighbor, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute, but it's to whom must I become a neighbor to? Can I become a neighbor to? And the man replied to this expert in law that was justifying himself, not helping and not intervening. The one who showed him mercy, I guess, he says. Then Jesus said, yes, now go and do the same. For this to happen, especially in American culture, which is a real challenge because our lives are pretty full. Any full lives in here? And as we're going into Christmas now, crazy. But for this to happen, the Good Samaritan had to let go of his personal to-do list, his hard-earned money, and his own safety in order to show love to a stranger that he had no obligation to help. Now that's radical love. That's crazy love. That's Jesus' love. It's God's love. And it's a love that gives people attention. When you can sneak up on somebody and love them unconditionally in a way that they had no expectation that would happen, you really get their attention, and it opens doors for you to share the love of God with them. And so I love this picture of doing that. You know, when people expect they feel like you owe them something, sometimes in our family, people close to us, you know, that the best you can do is pay what you should do. There's no gratefulness in that. And nothing really happens. But when you can give something to somebody and do something for somebody, and they know that they don't deserve any of it, and neither should you do any of it, it's powerful. It's powerful. I love Bruxy Covey in his book, End of Religion, a quite potent book, and I encourage you to read it. But it's really a challenge to re-examine our faith and how we live out our faith. He says, religious traditions can be a trap that keeps us from moving into uncharted territory of bold love and radical compassion. He almost says that our religious traditions can trap us, even when we're thinking about Christmas. That's one of the reasons I love Christmas Day here at the Vineyard, that we've broken typical traditions, that Christmas is only for us and our kind. And so on Christmas Day for the last 36 years, we've been going to nursing homes and visiting people that are all alone and have no family there. And it's been a powerful thing that we've tried to change the DNA that Christmas Day isn't just for us. It's actually keeping our eyes open and giving ourselves away on that day. And we're going to do it again this year as well. And how many of you have joined us on one of our Christmas Day visits? Look around the room. See, a lot of us, you know, that's just changed Christmas for me in a great way. But now let's go a little deeper, shall we? Because I think most of you know the story. My first question, why did the priest and the Levite, why did they do nothing? Were they too busy? Were they so caught up into their religious exercises that they didn't even, was what they were doing just so important that they couldn't stop what they were doing? When we look at the priest, if the victim was a fellow Jew, and especially a law-abiding Jew, the priest would have been obligated and responsible to reach out and help him, but he didn't. If the victim had been an Egyptian, a Greek, or Roman, or Syrian, the priest was not responsible under the law. I don't know which law, but the way their tradition, that they were not obligated to help. If you're not Jewish, I don't have to help you. If you are Jewish, I do have to help you. And if it got too close, if the priest got too close and he touched the wrong person at the wrong time with the wrong background, then you would become unclean. And that would, and you would risk becoming contaminated. You know what I love about Jesus? He never saw people as anything that he'd had to wash himself from. One time the Pharisees, as Jesus gathered with the disciples, they had kind of attacked Jesus. Why don't your disciples wash? There was a ceremonial washing that rabbis would do and religious leaders would do. And they noticed your disciples, they don't wash in this way. It wasn't that they were dirty before dinner. And Jesus ultimately said to them, my disciples don't need to wash because we don't see people as dirty. We don't see touching people that are hurting and broken and sick and wounded as something that we need to wash our hands from. And it was another picture of how God sees people. Now, the Levite, or the temple assistant, was someone else. And I think we fall into this trap. Since the priest had walked by the beaten man, the assistant could pass by with an easy conscience. Hey, since, the priest, and I don't want to upstage the priest, you don't do anything, so I'll just go right on by. I had a moment when I was a senior in college. Well, we went on a senior, we call a senior sneak, but we went away for a week, and we found ourselves in San Francisco, and a guy that I looked up to, one of the religious guys, because I wasn't one of them, religion major, and I love this guy, and that we were running, and as we were running in downtown San Francisco, actually a dangerous place for us to be in, there was a man in the street, and when I saw him, I thought Bill was my friend's name. I knew Bill was going to stop and help this guy, but he didn't do it. He just ran right by, and I ran right by because Bill ran right by. But then there was something that just accosted me. It's just like, I got to go back. Bill didn't go back, but I got to go back. And I took the lead. And that was the day leadership was born in my life. Because I was always following. I was never a leader at anything. But that was a watershed moment for me. And we went and helped him, and there was a whole story around that. We took him, and gave him some food and did some different things. And then there was an African-American gang that came on, and what are you doing to this guy? And put us against the wall. And then when we told them what we're doing, they said, really? And they let us go. It was one of those crazy moments. It's like, we shouldn't be doing this. But it actually challenged them because they had been walking by this man day after day after day. But because we stopped and did something, they decided to stop and do something more. But I say that story because there's a time, if your leaders, me as well, if we're not showing you the way and leading the way, you still go the way. Some of you look up to, you don't wait for somebody else to do the right thing. Hello. Sometimes we're waiting for someone else to be the first. But when something comes your way, that there are those moments that even the people that you look up to and you follow, that they don't do what you need to do. And you're not responsible for somebody else, what they do or don't do. Now let's talk about the innkeeper. You never talk about the innkeeper. I want to talk about the innkeeper. The Good Samaritan cared for the man up to a certain point, but the man needed more than what the Good Samaritan could offer. Why don't you chew on that a second? The innkeeper was someone that took the baton in helping this man beyond what the Good Samaritan do. It was very dangerous for the Good Samaritan to stay in Jericho any longer than he was. And I don't know what he had going. But then he gave the innkeeper, more money because the man needed money beyond what he could help. I don't know if you've caught this. That's how we see Convoy of Hope, as a picture of our innkeeper, that they can help people beyond what we can do and what we can connect with people. So the Good Samaritan, he gives the innkeeper money. He said, whatever you need. And with a picture of Convoy of Hope for us, we trust them with the resources that we're giving them today and in the next couple of weeks. We trust them to lead with compassion and mercy. We trust them to fight to ease the suffering in a broken world. We are taking what we have and doing what we have locally and doing what we can do here, but there's a need beyond what we encounter here, and we want to be involved in that too. We need people like Convoy who will play the role of the innkeeper, and we need Good Samaritans who will say to the innkeepers, back to our story, look after him, and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have. That's such a powerful moment of trusting that innkeeper. It's one thing to give money and do something, but to give your money to someone else and trust that they will use it wisely. And we do care about that. So what about us? Why do good people do nothing in the face of injustice and human plight? I think that's a relevant question. Do you? Why does it happen? And it happens in my life and yours. Here at the Vineyard, I want to talk about where we come from. There's some excuses that I hear, and they're real. The first one is we need to take care of our own. And by the way, the Bible says we need to take care of our own families. It says we're worse than an unbeliever if we don't care for our own family. If we help others, but we don't help our own family. But here at the Vineyard, we see people in our community as our people. We don't just think of people in our church as our people, but people in our community. When people ask the size of our church, I love to tell them 160,000. Says, wow, where do y'all fit? It says, no, that's our city. Our city is 160,000, and that's our people. But our people are also people beyond Fort Collins and beyond Colorado and beyond the United States. That our people are God's people, and they matter. They need to matter to us. Another thing I hear that becomes a little bit of an excuse: why reach out to others when we can't meet all the needs that we have right here in churches? I hear that in church life. Why give to them when we struggle ourselves? That's exactly right to do. Sometimes if we wait until we're not struggling, if we don't give when we have little, we're not going to give when we have more. You know what amazes me, even with our convoy offerings, that somehow, over and over again, people that have so little resource give so much of that resource to others. You know, like with Corey and their family and taking in a homeless guy for the evening. Sometimes there are people that they don't even have an extra bedroom, but they have a couch. Or they have a little food, but they'll share that little food. And it's amazing. Maybe it's because they're close to need. That they know what it is to struggle. They know what it is to not have enough. But it's amazing to me that those that don't have enough will give that not enough to somebody else. And it's such a picture. So, you know, why reach out to others when we can't meet the needs of the people we already have? Because people matter to God. God loves you and me. Did you know that God doesn't love Christians more than others? Have you ever figured that one out? Did you understand that we're not like anything special? We're not like more like those are my people. You know, but what we've experienced is not that God loves us more, but we've experienced the love of God in our lives that others have not. And that's tragic. That we've experienced the grace and the mercy of God and the goodness of God in our life. And we recognize that. And that is our benefit that we've received from God. But we are never better than anybody. And sometimes the church has acted like we're better than others. And it's to our shame when that attitude comes out. Because we're not better than anybody. And we're not God's, special chosen ones that he loves us and we matter and others don't. That's why when you think about people matter to God, we're dealing with all the immigrant things and all the political stuff that's on. People matter to him. All people, not just Americans, not just Fort Collins and Coloradoans or your family, but it's all people matter to him. And he wants what matters to him to matter to his church, to matter to you and to me and to us. And it's a big deal. Another thing that holds us back, fear of getting hurt, ripped off, or cheated. You know, when you see all these, guys on the street corners and, they used to say, we'll work for food, but that was never real. And then, you give once and, is it going to alcohol or drugs or is this, it's just perpetuating things. It's not about giving because we're guaranteed that we're not going to be ripped off. There's something about, and I'm one of those people, like, I don't give to every person on those street corners, and I don't even feel guilty anymore. But once in a while, there's this little bell ringing in my head. Rick, give this time. And don't worry about where it's going to go after you give it. You just do this. And I think I've realized that sometimes giving isn't figuring out all that stuff, but giving is for you to let go of what you have and to step into something, and sometimes you kind of know and you work it out, like Convoy of Hope is safe. But you might not know one of these. So what I'm encouraging is not everybody that's there is what we give to. Then there's blindness. That's the fourth one. Blindness, sometimes we can't see or we don't want to see. We just look away. West Stafford says that the reason that good people do nothing in the face of injustice and human plight, that we don't know what to do or who to trust. And that's a real deal. So Convoy gives us one opportunity if we know that's one thing we can do. Reaching out to people, to orphans and widows, that's something we can do. So what's your attitude? Here's where it gets a little sticky. What's your attitude in all this? Going back to thieves, their attitude, what's mine is mine and I'm going to get it. Because they're part of the story. They're robbers. What's yours is mine, and I'm going to take it from you. The religious leader's attitude, what's mine is mine, and I'm going to keep it mine. That was their deal. What's mine is mine, and I'm going to keep it mine, and I'm not going to be contaminated by you. The Samaritan's attitude, what's mine is yours, and I'm going to share it with you. What's mine is yours. And I'm going to share what was mine with you. Now, we could also have what mine belongs to God, and I'm going to give it to you. That's the better attitude. And the innkeeper, and some of you are innkeepers, give it to me, and I will give it to them. That's what Convoy of Hope is today. You give it to me, and I will get it to them. You give me the resources, and I will take it where you can't go. Because you can't survive here in this story. So my question, which attitude is most like you? Not the way you want it to be, but the way it really is. Again, I want to say I'm so proud of pastoring a church like this, like you. According to Jesus, our brother, our sister, our neighbor is whoever he places in our path. And not everybody that we encounter does it mean that we're to help, but some are. And we want to recognize that because we can't help everyone, but we can help someone. There was a movie. How many of you ever remember the movie Four Feathers? Does that come? Anybody? It wasn't a real popular movie, but it's a great movie. Go rent it, watch it. In this movie, there's a British soldier that is labeled a coward and gets a feather because he refuses to go to Africa and fight in a war that's going on there, that Britain is fighting. After a while, he feels very guilty and he feels the shame of that feather and that which is given to him as an act of shame. And he decides, I'm going to go on my own and I'm going to join my brothers and I'm going to fight like I should have fought before. Well, he gets there and he's in the middle of the desert and he's dying and done. And an African Muslim comes alongside of him to his age, picks him up and takes him and feeds him and nurtures him back to health in a cave with protection. And then at some point, this British soldier says, why? Why are you helping me? Why are you helping me? And the answer I've never forgotten is Abu, the Muslim African, says, God put you in my way. God put you in my way. I was in the desert and I saw you and I realized and I believe that God put you in my way. Christian British soldier cared for by an African Muslim. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? And what a powerful thing. So the question, who does God want you to be a neighbor to? Might be somebody really close. It might be somebody you've never met or will never see again. Who has God put in your way? Thinking about not every plight, heartache, hardship is yours, but some are. We need to discern. And I ask this question even by all the people on the street corner. I might give something 1 out of 50. I don't know. But some of it is yours and is mine and ours. And that's why we've chosen Convoy as one of our, in a big way. And that's what we're about today. Would you stand with me?